And thank you everybody for coming out tonight. I like some of the other speakers, I told them all there'd be 30 or 40 people here, and that's how I got them along, but it's great to see such a turnout of support from the community. I've got 2 pages of my best attempt to gaslight the whole meeting, but the quality of the speakers before me has deflated my entire speech, so I'm going to have to sort of move it around a little bit. Very pleased to hear a lot of what we've heard tonight. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the advocacy of Taieri-based Councillor Cherry Lucas, who responded to the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board's plan and successfully moved the heavy transport bypass for Mosgiel to be investigated again by the DCC. This has got the issue, as we've heard from Jim, this has got the issue firmly back on the council agenda. The formation of a heavy transport bypass for Mosgiel is the #1 priority of the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board, and it's the #1 priority for us because that's what we hear most of from the community. We hear from parents who worry about their children crossing Gordon Road every day, getting to and from school. We hear from children who are worried about their grandmother crossing Gordon Road every day to catch the bus. We've heard from the residents of Chatsford who are too scared to park on Gordon Road for fear of losing their car door. Just this week I heard from Linda Brown. Mrs Brown didn't lose her car door to a truck on Gordon Road, she lost her whole car. It was demolished while parked outside Alex Campbell's seconds after she got out of the car. But heavy trucks have got no option but to use Gordon Road. It is currently the designated heavy traffic route across the Taieri. Without the admirable skill and vigilance of the truck drivers and the self-imposed speed limits that some of the trucking companies have put in place for Gordon Road, the toll in our community would be far greater than what it is. So heads off to the truck drivers. The continuation of heavy transport down Gordon Road is an unacceptable safety and an unacceptable impediment to the businesses on that road. We want to see that changed. The DCC first identified the need for a heavy transport bypass to take trucks away from Gordon Road in 2003. Since 2003, the trucks have become far more numerous and far bigger. We've learned from Evan today about the 2008 plan to widen Riccarton Road. The 2008 plan required the DCC to purchase a strip of land from 28 landowners on Riccarton Road. The DCC bought land or had an agreement to buy land from 22 of the 28 landowners. The plan then met a legal challenge from a small group of affected residents on Riccarton Road, and the DCC, impoverished by the construction of the Dunedin Stadium, took the opportunity to walk away. The unavoidable reality is that had that legal challenge not been mounted, Riccarton Road today would be 4 metres wider than what it is, and it would have a shared path for walkers and cyclists along its full length. Questions can be asked about the resilience of the DCC at this time, but I think this was a failure of the community. A failure by the community to stand up for the greater good of all Mosgiel, and that cannot be allowed to happen again. Later in 2013, the DCC adopted its Comprehensive Integrated Transport Plan. It's an impressive and expensive document that draws on expert studies and data and sets out improvements for transportation across Dunedin for safety, efficiency and social reasons. Somewhere near the top of the priorities on that plan was the separation of heavy transport from the vulnerable population of Mosgiel. As the plan says, a population characterised by young children, and we've heard from Greg today, I think 3,000 school children plus in Mosgiel, and senior citizens. The other priorities listed in that plan were the improvements to Portobello Road, the improvements to State Highway 88, including the creation of a shared path for cyclists and walkers, and the creation of a heavy transport bypass for central Dunedin via Strathallan Street. All very expensive projects, and all projects which are now completed except for Mosgiel. Again, is this the fault of the DCC, or is it the fault of the community who assumed that because the issue was a priority in the plan, that something would happen? The Taieri is the fastest growing community in Dunedin. The industrial estate at North Taieri is the fastest growing industrial area of Dunedin. And tonight we've heard of a visionary new proposal to establish an inland freight hub in North Taieri with potential benefits for all of Dunedin. Far fewer truck movements through Dunedin and through Port Chalmers, freight coming off the road and going onto the rail, massive efficiency gains and reduced carbon emissions. Fantastic news, and great news for those that live on or use State Highway 1 through Dunedin or State Highway 88 through to Port Chalmers. Not such great news for those of us that use State Highway 87 Gordon Road, not unless the issue of a heavy transport bypass receives greater urgency from the community and from the DCC. Everybody here deserves a say. I think this is down to us. I strongly urge you to get behind this issue in every way possible, and the first step coming out tonight, so thank you very much for this, but this is step one. I urge you to participate at every stage of the process from today on. Thank you very much for coming out tonight and showing your support.
Thank you, Andrew. Now that we've heard from all our guest speakers, we invite those of you with questions to please raise a hand. And Regan and Brian will bring a microphone over to you. Just a friendly reminder to please keep your questions concise and directed to our panel, and remember, we are looking forward, not back.
My question is to Councillor O'Malley. It consists of 3 points. Number one, when are they going to lower the speed limit on Gordon Road to 30k in the CBD? Number two is how are they going to mitigate the heavy traffic heavy traffic that are using High Street as an alternative to Gordon Road to get away from the traffic lights and obviously to get away from congestion. We've got 18 wheelers down there coming with 40-foot containers on the back of them, and as you know, if you live down the far end of High Street, it's not wide enough. We have enough trouble with boy races. And number three is, I suggest that Councillor O'Malley come out and have a coffee with me one day, and we'll sit at the wooden table and we'll have a look at the intersection at Factory Road, Bush Road, Gordon Road. And no wonder that car got taken out. It is disgusting. It's a disgusting intersection, full stop. And I do believe that council need to go out there and stand and watch for half an hour just to see what goes on. I feel sorry for the truck drivers and bus drivers because they cannot negotiate that intersection with people parked outside of Al Campbell's menswear. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sorry, there again, just keep going.
Just keep going? Okay, good. Thanks for that. I'm very aware of that intersection. I actually rent commercial spaces in May, so I'm on Gordon Road quite a lot when I come in for lunch or something like that. I don't think the council is in any way saying it's not planning on doing this. I think the point is actually that there has been a period of, what's the best word for it, lost focus or loss of action as a sort of a rebound from what happened in the past. That time's over. We can't do that anymore. We definitely do have to get onto this and get onto it quickly. We have limited powers when it comes to dictating whether trucks can or cannot move on certain streets. We can put weight limits on streets, and in terms of, but it goes through the process of it has to go. We have to be informed that someone's asking, and then we act on that. So what I would suggest is if you can work through the community board as a mechanism for just getting everybody's views together, then we can act on it. Speed limit reviews are done once every 6 months, and they're done usually in sectors of the city, and we do have a policy that if someone has a request for a speed limit change, then in the review it goes in at that time. We can't do speed limit, well actually we can do experimental reductions in speed limits now. It's a new thing that the government's brought through, and I'd be more than willing to get you to the right person to talk about whether or not we could do that on Gordon Road. But actually, who would want Gordon Road dropped to 30k? More or less is anyway. And so that's a good sense right up straight away as to whether or not we want to move quickly on that or not. So I'll take that to heart and I'll take that back to the Transport Department and I'll work with Andrew on that.
Right?
Yeah, Neil Hodgkin speaking. One point that hasn't been mentioned, and that is the length of trucks that are coming through Mosgiel. They're probably 30 tonnes and probably 30 metres long, I don't know, Peter, you'll be able to tell me. But they must take up the space of about 4 to 5 cars. And when you've got 5 sets of traffic lights going through Gordon Road and almost as many pedestrian crossings, and if a train goes past, there's a very narrow intersection between Gladstone Road north and south and Higgett Alexander Drive and the one on the other side. Those trucks are taking up a lot of space for cars, and when you're trying to get round the corner going somewhere, you've got to wait through a couple of sets of lights before you get going. So that's just another issue, that the length of the trucks are taking up 5 or 6 cars.
Did you have a question?
No, it's just a comment that hasn't been mentioned yet, and I think it's quite valuable, and that's why I've spoken about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Kevin Wilson's my name. I've got a question for Councillor O'Malley. It seems to me that without any decision about a land board, obviously I think there was Mounds and Gate here, everyone thought that was a great idea. It was talked about out by the Fonterra factory. That is obviously not going to go ahead. It sounds like a great thing, but you don't have the agreement, so that's not likely. You said that there may be another one in plan down at Melbourne. Well, that seems like a great idea to me. That's going to create more trains coming through Gordon Road, which is going to, the intersection into Mosgiel is a cluster. It'll be worse if there's a port down at Melbourne, and we'll be wanting a bridge built over that main street. Now, the DCC won't want to pay for that. They'll want the government to pay for that. They'll only pay for that if it's a state highway. So, aren't we better to sort a few things out instead of doing things piecemeal? I know we're talking about time here, but I don't think it's right just to charge ahead and do something which 5 years later you're thinking, shit, I wish we hadn't done that. That intersection is a cluster. It is the bigger problem. We're talking about trucks right now, but it's a bigger problem and it's going to get worse. The traffic coming off the Settle Hill at rush hour is ridiculous. It's actually all wide and fixed. That whole thing is a mess. Coming in from the airport, it all congregates, it builds up in that one spot. And then if you're going to have trains coming through and people going nowhere, while the train, I was there the other day, not only did it stop, then backed up and came back through. So, that is an issue that needs to be looked at, and there's no point in looking at these problems in isolation. I'm keen to know what your thoughts are about whether there needs to be more consideration about our whole road network in Mosgiel.
You actually pretty much nailed it, and that's the reason that I'm saying it won't actually happen tomorrow or next year, because that modelling that has to go down as to what is the consequence if you move traffic to this road, what happens to the flow of traffic, what happens at 5 o'clock, that sort of stuff all has to be taken into account, because you are going to be balancing out pluses and minuses, and you don't want to make an accident by accidentally going in one direction and wishing you hadn't, because now you spend tens of millions of dollars. There's no way you're going to reverse that. I do want to touch a little bit on the level crossing at Gordon Road there. We brought that up at the Regional Transport Committee, and we are quite literally getting the middle finger from Mosgiel-Taieri at the moment. And I actually did say once, will that backup have to be so bad that someone gets rear-ended coming down Saddle Hill? And unfortunately, the answer may be yes, but hopefully it doesn't. But I mean, I know how bad that is. I've seen that intersection. I've seen it a lot, and I've brought it up at the Regional Transport Committee on just how bad it is. That if we can't get the load off that intersection, then you are talking about some major spend there in one form or another. I'm pretty much sure that's why Mosgiel doesn't want to look at it. One thing that would help, obviously, though, is that if the heavy traffic, as Jim pointed out, those trucks are very big, and they're also, the pickup speeds are lower too. So if that's moved to another spot, that might help. To the extent to which it will help, I think the other talk would be that you get an agreement with KiwiRail not to use the level crossing at certain times of the day that coincide with the high road requirements. So, and that requires communication for both. Now, on the Regional Transport Committee, only 2 committees, Wellington and Auckland, have KiwiRail on them. The rest of them don't, and we're in the middle of getting KiwiRail onto our committee. so that we can actually talk about this coordinated behaviour, because it is a matter of getting it all to work together. Just remember that every container that goes past you on a rail line, though, is one less truck, or half a less truck, depending on if it's got a trailer or not. But the point being that it's that balance between the two, and maybe you can just get around that effectively with a timing component of do not put a 1 kilometre long freight train through there at 5:05. You know. Thanks. Question was a good question.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, State Highway 87, which goes through to Kyburn, is serviced by stock trucks, fertiliser trucks and freight trucks. Now, where is that road going to connect up to the bypass? And also this heavy traffic bypass you're going to bring along Jukes Road and Riccarton Road. Is it going to be State Highway, part of State Highway 87, or is the State Highway still going to go through Mosgiel? Now, for trucks coming out of Middlemarch to go right through to 5 Roads and come back around there is probably not possible, so they're going to have to turn off at Wiley's Crossing, so you're also going to have to do that piece of road up down to Jukes Road. Can you please answer that one?
Great question, Hammy. Hammy actually works for me. He's retired now, so that's why he's taken it out of me. Look, the solution, you know, the issue is Gordon Road, and so our concept as a truck driver was the only way to bypass Gordon Road is go Riccarton Road down to Jukes Road. So, you know, and as Jim acknowledged that it's going to be quite a long process, even if that is the concept. Just one thing I'd like to make a comment is, Jim, you talk about your inland port at Melbourne. A couple of things is, if we put an inland port at Mosgiel and did a deal with Wakakatahi, by putting an inland port in there, taking trucks off the road to put on rail, and then they put money, which will be saving money going through the city, and then we'll be able to put money to put a new bypass in. It's actually just about vision, you know, and not disrespecting anyone, but as a team together we can work through this. We've got David Parker, who's the Transport Minister at the moment, hopefully for a short time. But while he's in power, can we get him on board and work through this as a team?
Well, all other transport ministers are there for a short time, apparently. And did you get a dozen there for that question, by the way? I think what all these questions are raising is the fact that if we do embrace this, and I think we need to embrace it, then we need to deal with all the design components that go with it. And that means it won't be, everybody will have an idea of what is the right idea. And then, you know, then a plan comes out to be consulted on. People think, oh my God, you're forcing this down our throats. That's usually the point at which you're saying, if we were to do this, what have we missed? Have you missed these upgrades at this intersection? Have you not noticed that there's going to be this much more traffic going past this school? These kind of things. And that's the consultation process, because that's what then determines the design at the end. And it needs to be done well, and that's why the government basically puts in these timeframes. It says you will take this long to do it, because if you rush it through, you'll come up with the wrong answer. It does require patience at the other end, but I mean, every question we've had tonight is effectively what will come out in a good consultation process.
Okay, so just following on from that, given that the process will take around 5 years to get to whereas the taxpayers pay through whatever government is in at the time for 75% of it, and we as the ratepayers are going to be coming up with the rest of it. That's about quite a bit for the rest of us. And given that there are some people here in this audience who sadly will not be around by the time it is even thought of being possible to be built, what can we do in terms of planning the transition for the next 5+ years, and who will take the lead role on that? We need to be working working on getting changes now. I mean, I applaud your wonderful new truck, hydrogen-powered truck, but if I was a 4-year-old seeing that coming along Gordon Road, I'd be thinking the end is near.
You know, Brian didn't get to see his speed limit changes, but he actually, his was the last court case resolved at the second generation plan, so he did sign the paperwork for the changes in speed limit on Riccarton Road. And if that needs to be done in Gordon Road as well during the period of time, I think that would be just the smallest of interventions. And then we could talk about other interventions like, I don't know, don't hold me to any of these, but let's say signalised crossing outside of school or anywhere where you know there's some danger, while we wait for the bigger process to get the project to be put into place. Straight up, speed reduction is the obvious starting point, because that does just give everybody more time to react if there's bad interaction. And I don't think truck drivers would mind being a bit slowed down for a few blocks. You know, that's what it comes down to really though, because it's an interaction. It's quite literally the interaction between us wanting to use the streets for different purposes. One is to carry heavy freight, one is to be a light vehicle, one is to ride a bike, one is to walk. And they're all on the same road corridor. So it's a balance of trying to get that whole lot put together. One way to do it is where you have a place like Gordon Road where there's a lot of walking and commercial activity. You tend to want to get the heavy traffic off there. So that'll be the first point. But to get it off, we have to figure out where to put it, and then we have to get the money into planning and all that stuff. So that will take a bit of time. In the meantime, I would suggest the first starting point would be speed limit reduction, and it seemed that was relatively popular in the room. So when we go yes to that in the future, please don't yell at me.
Our 4-year-olds will be building better trucks.
You talk about the speed limit in Mosgiel and changing it. You probably find when you go through the main centre of Mosgiel from Bush Road down to about the BP garage, if you're doing any more than 30k or 40k at the most, you're crazy. So from there down, if you're going to put 30k from there down to the railway crossing, you're only going to cause problems. And then you look at your speedo when you're going through the main centre of Mosgiel, so why go to all that effort of bringing it down to 30k when that's all you can do?
Chances are most of the questions will end up towards me. Well, we could leave it at 50. So that's the whole point of the consultation process. We've had two disparate views in the room tonight, and they're incompatible with each other. And the road controlling authority, which is the council, will have to make a call on one of those two. It will have to. So it will annoy the other group when it does it, while it makes that group happy. And that comes back to you as a community. What do you want on Gordon Road? I don't want to impose it. You need to ask for it. You need to be clear and unified in what you're asking for, and then the council can deliver. If we get a muddied answer, if we get, oh yeah, those guys like it but we hate it, then we're in a position where we don't know what to do. So I'm really saying, go to your community board, because that's probably the best place to get all this done and get a unified voice on what you want done, and then we can respond to that.
Question for the whole panel really. At the beginning of the presentation, you brought out the honeypot and mentioned a possible Greenfields Site, and that was the last we heard of it. Since then, you've mentioned nothing other than Riccarton Road, Riccarton Road, Riccarton Road. Sounds like a train. Can anybody comment on why the Greenfields Site hasn't been talked about any further? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Look, I think the point about the Greenfields Site is that there may be options that none of us have considered because they don't yet exist. So the only option is not just using an existing road. I think what Peter tried to say earlier is that some of the developments in Mosgiel are going to bring a lot more urgency to this than what currently exists today and what we've seen in the past. And with urgency comes probably the likelihood that we will use an existing, or that an existing route will be used rather than a greenfield route, but that shouldn't be ruled out. So that was simply their question. That was simply why that was raised. And I just want to take a wee opportunity just to talk about the speed limit thing. I am on Bush Road, not far off Riccarton Road, so I come through the Bush Road, Riccarton Road intersection probably 4 or 5 times a day. What I've noticed since the council, so there have been 3 people killed on that intersection in the time that I've lived there, and there have been a number of other serious accidents, including one last year where a man on a motorbike was cleaned up by somebody who came through the stop sign on Bush Road, and that man will never walk again. So, from my point of view, that's far too many already. I've seen people complaining about the speed reduction on Riccarton Road, and I was one of the loudest voices to the council, not as loud as Brian, but somewhere, saying this is bloody dangerous because it's become a chosen path. So since the extra set of lights went in at the pool, and during the time that the road was closed, the pool, a lot of trucks and a lot more traffic from Outram and the hinterland started using Riccarton Road, and the volume of traffic, there was an exponential increase in the volume of traffic down there. When the speed limit was 80, everybody came down there at 100. And it's bloody it was bloody dangerous. The road's not wide enough, it's not level, and it's got massive water tables on either side. It's just not safe. Now that the speed limit's 50, people are coming down there at 70, and it is far safer than what it was. There's a much better opportunity of getting out of Bush Road without the risk of being cleaned up by somebody from Outram coming down there far too fast. So I think we could see the same thing in Gordon Road. Yes, trucks probably don't exceed 30 k's. I don't think that's necessarily the only issue. But there are plenty of cars that exceed 50 coming down there. And my view is that if you signal it at 30, and we saw the same thing in Wanaka. Wanaka, they reduced the whole of Wanaka Township to 40, and everybody moaned. I mean, you can do more than 40 on a push bike. But people are now going 50 where they used to go 70, and it is far safer than what it was. And I think it is a really good, it's something that the community needs to consider as a signal that we want to do something about this. So thank you.
You push the button, leave the button alone.
Just got one comment.
Give us
In a certain area by 30%, it will take you 30% longer to from A to B, which means your vehicle is on the road for 30% longer as everybody else's is, which equates to 30% more congestion, which equates to possibly more accidents. You just have to get a fine mix between reducing speed and...
If there's a question there, could it be repeated?
Sorry, I don't know if anybody heard me. It's really just a comment. If we reduce the speed limit by reducing the speed by 30%, it'll take 30% longer to reach our destination, which means our vehicles on the road for 30% longer, which means 30% more vehicles on the road for that journey. And I think we just need to get a fine mix between reducing speed. No point in reducing it if you're going to end up with twice as many vehicles, especially in a congested area like Gordon Road. You reduce it to 10 k's, and you'd have cars bumper to bumper from one end to the other. You just need to get a fine mix. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sue Broad from Outram, and I have a question for Mr. Winders and maybe Mr. Dimes. Could they give a guesstimate on the number of truck movements they would expect if Riccarton Road was indeed the heavy traffic bypass to their inland port? I'd be curious to know how many truck movements per day they could guess or imagine, And would those truck movements be limited to an 8 to 5 window, or would they be 24 hours a day?
I'll have a go at that, and then you can help me out, Pete. So clearly, the land that Port Otago owns at Duke's Road there, we'd be progressively developing that, because we don't need it all now. We've got 7 hectares, so you'll probably see earthworks out there in the next 3 to 4 months of the first phase. So that's probably likely to generate something like 20 to 30 truck movements in a day for us. That's the sort of level I think will be additional truck movements into that site. And clearly over time, if we develop further, that will increase, particularly the cargo coming from the south. So some cargo will come from the south. It's not so much the northern cargo, so you won't find Timaru cargo coming down there through Dunedin and then effectively driving out to Mosgiel, let alone driving to Melbourne to drop off a container to come back on rail into port. So we've got a balance where some cargo will still come into State Highway 88 and down to port. So it's a fine balance for us. So probably, I'd say about 20 to 30 would be my pick in the first stage for Port Otago. Pete?
It's a great question, actually. It's a really good question, and you know, as we work more with Kiwi Rail, we want to put more freight on Kiwi Rail. We don't want trucks going through town, like we said. So initially, there would be an increase, is what Kev said, but then over time, that would decrease. We'd work to keep decreasing it. And if there was, you know, if we're lucky enough to find a bit of land out there to develop with stores and that, then again, as you've seen on the video, there's 3,500 trucks would take off the road between here and Dunedin. And I think, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like, great question, we can't slow down, that trucks are an issue. We actually got to get trucks off the road. The issue is, we're hearing the sooner it's going to be is 5 years, well, you're saying it's not good enough. But an inland port could be built quicker and get freight on rail. And again, it's a bit like the vision, you've got to build foundation before growth. And I think that's what we're talking about.
So, the trucking level that we're talking about, the trucks that would just normally travel all the way into Dunedin, they would instead be diverted through Mosgiel to be put onto the rail. Is that correct?
It's another great question. There's the trucks that go through from south to Dunedin. There's only the pan-packed timber actually, the rest of it's on rail. All Fonterra's on rail. Silver Fern Farms chilled. A lot of that goes by McClellan's into Mosgiel. So yeah, it would increase, but then with the other trucks that are on the road, and we put that on rail, I reckon it'd be neutral. It probably would go up 20%, but then as we got more sophisticated and work better with rail, then we'll try and neutralise that. But if we don't do nothing, it's going to increase anyway. So we've got to start working together on it.
So ultimately, it is your feeling that an inland port is more suitable in Mosgiel than it is at Melbourne, given that an inland port at Melbourne could be exceedingly adjacent to the rail and not a long distance from the state highway.
I've got the mic now, but I'll hand it back. If you only had 20 extra truck movements a day, you haven't built an inland port. An inland port's going to have at least 150 to 200 truck movements in it to be a meaningful impact.
Yeah.
And if all of the dairy's already on rail, how can you put any more on rail? I think it's actually about 70%. I think 60, you can keep me with it, tell me, but high 60% is going to port on rail at the moment, something like that.
Yeah, Port Chalmers is New Zealand's highest rail naval port at 65. So it's only about 35% of the containers that come into the port are on road. And that's to Strathallan Street or effectively out here to Fonterra to deliver empties and then backfill on the rail into town and through the port. So clearly, that's enabling the rail is the key thing for us as Pete said.
So, as Mr. O'Malley's pointed out, that an import at Melbourne could actually be far larger and more future-proofed potentially. And from residential point of view in Mosgiel, there would be less issue with significant trucking increases on Riccarton Road. I personally feel that Melbourne is a much better option.
Yeah, it's just a bit far away, and there's some real challenges with the site in respect to rail capability and then a shuttle into the port. So clearly I think Jim's vision might be 150 trucks. Our vision isn't that scale. There's just not the volume of truck movements that we're trying to avoid. So clearly we've got majority of our traffic already on rail. We're trying to bring the last piece of traffic onto rail. So I don't think the scale that we're talking about will be delivered at Melbourne. So we're not talking that scale of an inland port.
So obviously a bit of debate to be had there, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. There is a vacancy on the board, so well done.
Okay, I've lived on the Taieri for over 50 years, and I've been to several of these meetings with councillors and the regional council, and I've put forward what you call a Greenfields plan as an access road through from Wingatui, from Abbotsford. Because that road there is actually called North Taieri Road. It's still, I think, down on the council plans as a paper road. You wouldn't be able to get access down through Abbotsford, but if you stayed between the hills there, the Friends Hill and Chain Hills, go through the hollow there and around the side of the hill, you could drop down into Burnside. You wouldn't have to go through any residential areas at all, and that would be for the traffic. You'd still have your southbound stuff coming through Duke's Road, but then going out to Dunedin, you'd go out through Burnside and over the hills there, and that would be a third option. It would take the pressure off the main railway crossing intersection, and people could come in through the north, because Mosgiel's moving in the north direction. And also, if you've been over the North Taieri industrial area, there's a new subdivision over there for more industrial areas going up there, so it's only going to increase it, not even with your guys, Dynes Transport, there's other industries building over there as well, which is going to increase traffic as well.
I'm a little aware, I am aware of that road in Abbotsford, but it wouldn't be able to go down that road anymore, right? So you have to go somewhere else, because a kid actually was hit by a truck at Abbotsford School about 4 months ago. If we do a Greenfield road, like did come up, we're talking another zero put on the end of everything here, because you've got to get your road corridor acquired, you've got to build a brand new base to the road, you've got to do everything from scratch. So you tend to avoid those unless you can't use what's already there. So, but I don't want to get in the way of, we're going to go forward with this, but the next stage of this, once it gets on the Regional Land Transport Plan as a placeholder, is to actually design where it will go. And I think every design has to be considered. And then from that you'll get ones that obviously work and ones that don't work, and then from that you get your short list, and that's what you go out and consult with.
So if we wanted to use Gladfield Road between the main highway and Duke's Road, you've got a road that is dead straight, is got virtually no buildings on either side, and you don't have to build the bridge unless you let them go through the water. I myself have always felt that was the best one.
Yeah, it is. Take that into design consideration. All the positives are on that end of it. The negative is that it's in the floodplain, so it had to be elevated. Doable. It's well inside the engineering capacity to do that, but you need to have a guaranteed flood-free road. So that's a little bit further over. So that would have extra cost going with it to do that. But on the positive side of it, you are quite right about not interacting with people.
Hello. The meeting seems to have come to a natural sort of stop. So could I, on behalf of all of us, thank all of you for the effort you've put in. We appreciate there's a lot of work still to do, so will you join me in thanking the panel?
Thank you. I'm Cherry Lucas and I got voted onto council at the last election, and I was, I guess, a little bit naive and didn't realise how slow things progress. And as you've heard from Jim tonight, how slow the process is, and the fact that I couldn't get anything done to go into this year's budget to even get anything started to be investigated shows the process of the importance of the 10-year plan, which is next year. And so when council call for submissions, it's going to be really important that everybody here on the Taieri and the Mosgiel actually tell council we want something done about the heavy traffic in Mosgiel, because otherwise, if we don't all speak up, it's just going to, still not progress. And as Jim said, it's still not going to be another 5 years, and we're still standing around here and nothing's progressed. And also, I think we're very fortunate that Jim's come along tonight and that he is the council representative on that Regional Land Transport Committee, and he has said that he's going to help fight to get this on there. And I guess my role now is at the council table is to keep reminding council how important that this is, but I need the community to also keep telling council, and I can just be the voice. I mean, I live out here, I know the issues of it. I mean, those of us who were at the Anzac Day service when the fully laden sheep truck came along realise, how much of an issue it is, even on a day like that when we didn't think there would be any traffic. So we just need to keep telling council how important it is, and I guess that's my role is to keep your voice around that council table. And I just want to thank you all for the fantastic turnout, and everybody here. I think we've all learned a lot about the process, and now we just need to make sure that we just keep on it. So thank you.
I'm sorry, I just had one question. Sorry, I still had one question. I was waiting patiently. Probably to Councillor O'Malley. Just wondering, given the time taken for these processes to happen, we're talking 6, maybe longer years, is there any communication within the council, so your department talking to the department that gives residential developments the go-ahead? Is there something to stop if we decide on an area that's going to be going down that channel, that the residential developments are sort of put on a go-slow for that time? Because from my understanding, that's what happened with the original bypass, is that a residential planning consent was given, and then we've got houses built there. It's just about communication between the departments, surely.
And it's also about making sure that a covenant, if it's put in place, is observed. And I it's no mention. It makes no sense to me that you would build Alexander Drive and then shove houses on it straight after you built it. And that's where Gladfield becomes an interesting road, because it's nowhere near where we're going to be putting any. It's too far into the floodplain for any more housing development in that area. So you can almost guarantee there'll be no houses down there if you build that far down. Just build it nice and high. I think the other one was that in that original Haggard Alexander Drive, it was supposed to go through to Duke's Road through the airport, through the aerodrome. And the second part never got built, and the whole intention was it was moving traffic only from that industrial area in a safe way around Mosgiel. If now we just take it to a Riccarton Road and down, or don't want to predispose to Riccarton Road or Gladfield, that will achieve that outcome. But I think Haggard Alexander was entirely dependent on that. I'm interested and a little bit concerned about the idea of deliberately bringing traffic off State Highway 1 back towards Mosgiel, because I think that would be undermining the objective here, which is to get all the traffic that is coming from the top end, from the Outram end, or from the Duke's Road end, and trying to get the State Highway 1, taking it to another place. The idea of bringing traffic in to Duke's Road, I don't know, seems a bit counterproductive, to be honest.
Go for it.
Excuse me. I'd like to ask 2 or 3 questions, please.
Sorry, the questions are finished.
I don't think that's very fair at all.
Okay,
Thank
Last
you.
one.
My name's Roger Miller. I've lived up in Riccarton Road East all my life. Owned Miller's Orchard. Riccarton Road East is a very heavily populated residential area with 70 houses fronting Riccarton Road East, with also 5 cul-de-sacs with a total number of another 80 houses. My first thoughts were for council planners would be we need to avoid conflict between heavy traffic and heavily populated residential routes. And this has not happened. We have been to numerous hearings over the years. The Riccarton Road Action Group has employed engineers, traffic engineers. We have been before independent commissioners where the independent commissioners accepted our traffic engineer's report that said there needs to be some upgrading of Riccarton Road, and we accept that, and it was done. Hedges were cut lower so that there was more visibility for the trucks. We also talked to transport companies, Dines, the Eden Carrying Company, etc., saying that they should be able to use the Riccarton Road corridor, even though it is not wide enough, and to avoid the main street of Mosgiel. And that is happening. We've also got this issue where at the Quarry Road intersection where there is a huge amount of more cars coming out from Dunedin and coming down Riccarton Road, and I accept that. I think that's a good thing. And I think a heavy traffic route on Riccarton Road on its own is not acceptable. I think there needs to be a ring road system that everybody shares. And you also need to remember that on the main street of Mosgiel, there is a huge amount of trucks servicing the town, which you cannot get rid of. But in their wisdom, the City Council under Variation 9B decided to rezone all this land over in Duke's Road without a heavy traffic route. So they caused the problem themselves, and now they're trying to shaft Riccarton Road. And I'll tell you what I mean by shafting Riccarton Road.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. I think we've been right through that, and I appreciate your views.
I'm going to tell you just one more point.
A concise question, please. A concise question.
Right, I'll ask Mr. O'Malley. Do you know that the Riccarton Road is now in the roading hierarchy an arterial route?
Looking down to the front row there, and he just, okay, I'll take your word for it, it is, and it probably defined
It's a local road. Now it's actually
defined on the amount of traffic that goes down it. Are bringing up the very consultation points that would be the requirement for the consultation of choosing the heavy traffic bypass. We're not picking the route tonight. We are determining that we will go forward with the process of identifying the heavy traffic bypass, and in whatever form it turns out to be at the end of the consultation process. You're going to weigh up communities that don't want it, with communities that do want it, with cost, with efficiency, all those things are going to happen. And you're not going to end up with the gold-plated one that everybody loves, unless you want to spend $100 million. So you'll end up with what is best at the end of the consultation process, and I'm committing that we'll commit ourselves to that process. If we fail to achieve it, we will not be able to build it.
Thank you, everyone. I'll now close the meeting with the karakia. Kua mutu a mātou mahi, mō tēnei wā, manakitia mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, oio ki te aorangi. Our work has finished, for the moment. Bless us all, our colleagues, friends, our family. Peace to the universe. I wish to thank all of our guest speakers tonight. Your input into this discussion has been valuable. Thank you to the audience for attending tonight and participating in the discussion. We would encourage further community participation as this matter advances. If you aren't already, please follow the Mosgiel-Taieri Community Board's Facebook page for updates, and please have your say. Ko Māori, good evening.